All right, everyone, now we have to talk about another depraved and authoritarian attack on democracy. It's not coming from the MAGA populists, though. It's generally directed against them more than anything else. MAGA populists and libertarians, and to an extent, oddly enough, leftoids in some cases, are the ones that are the true bearers of the albatross, so to speak, when it comes to political persecution. We have to talk about Mr. Moore. Link in the description, archived, of course, Colton Moore. In Georgia. He's a state senator, and he was arrested the other day. Why was he arrested? Because he had previously criticized the deceased former House Speaker and was attempting to go to the governor's address. And he tried to enter the chamber, and they threw him to the ground and then arrested him. This is depraved, in my opinion. The mere fact of a person who is representing a body of people going into a political event in order to hear somebody speak is depraved. It's tyrannical. He had called the outgoing, House Speaker, who was deceased at the time, a tyrant, actually. He's a MAGA Republican, called him a rhino and a tyrant, basically. As a result, he was banned from the congressional chamber. But he's simply going there to potentially represent his constituents. Let me ask you this. If the taxpayers are funding an elected individual, and they're not committing any actual crime or anything, they're not disrupting proceedings or anything of that nature, and otherwise there's decorum, why should they be able to be banned from taking their seat? Let me ask you that. It's a rhetorical question because, of course, the answer is no, they shouldn't be. That is depriving the taxpayers that voted for the individual, actually, of the ability to be fully represented. If there's no just cause for them to not be there, then they should be there. If there is just cause for them not to be there, then they should be officially removed and not simply banned from taking the floor and taking their seat. They should be impeached. Just impeach them. Remove them from their office. If you think that they're that bad, remove them completely. Otherwise, they should be able to come and represent their constituents. The whim of the constituents that voted for this individual, for Colton Moore, almost said Roy Moore accidentally, is now being violated effectively by the legislature of the state of Georgia. It doesn't surprise me that this would happen in Georgia. They're going through some changes. You've got a disconnect, I think, between the average Georgian and the politicians there at this point. I think there's a severe disconnect. It seems Georgia is going more, blue state mentality, whereas the voters, quite clearly, based on the last election's results, etc., aren't going in that direction. Atlanta's not the only place in Georgia. There are a lot of other places that have to have representation. This is a big problem in some states. It's sort of like here in the state of Vermont. We have the Northeast Kingdom and Rutland, and to an extent Bennington, the former being effectively red state territory. The Northeast Kingdom is very, very conservative. And then Rutland and Bennington are sort of like swing state mode. And the rest of the state is far blue. Now, we just saw a swing in our own state, actually, in the legislature. The Democrats had a supermajority in both the House and the Senate for a very long time. That has changed now. They've lost their supermajority in both the upper and lower chambers now, although they still do have a majority. It's just not veto-proof, effectively. So now Phil Scott the Rhino is capable of overriding them, which he will presumptively not generally do. He's basically a do-nothing governor. That's the sort of Republican that would lead a state like Vermont. It's far blue. And so the problem is that you can end up with the abuse of representatives from areas of the state that aren't towing the line very, very easily. So the representative from the Northeast Kingdom or something like that, it's in the state house, can just be basically brushed aside and not even being able to represent the constituents that have voted for them. It deprives them of legislative representation. And this is a big problem in some parts of the country. By the way, it works in both directions. You could have a state that is rather red and has supermajority Republican control, and the Democratic representative from the capital city is effectively brushed aside the same way. This should not be happening. He committed no crime. All he did was criticize somebody. Oh, but he's dead, so he's not allowed to criticize him. Well, fuck. It's like when John McCain died. Some people thought it was wrong when I criticized him, and they're like, well, you know, his body's still warm. And it's like, well, he caused hundreds of thousands of deaths. He sold out our nation in the Vietnam War. What the fuck do you want from me? You expect me to respect this man simply because he's deceased. His heart stopped working, so I'm not allowed to criticize him anymore. That's not the way that it works, and it's not the way that it should work. You should be able to criticize anyone you want within a political capacity or without the political capacity. You should be able to criticize them. The fact that a person has died does not mean that you have to magically stop saying the things that they've done were wrong. It's like plenty of people criticize Adolf Hitler now, don't they? Plenty of people criticize Joseph Stalin. There are plenty of people that criticize Richard Milhouse Nixon. He's been dead for a long time. He's just dusty bones at this point. Yellowed bones. I don't think the liberals have a problem with saying he's a piece of shit. I don't happen to believe that completely, but, you know, that's what they would say. So, why exactly was he banned from the House chamber? I'm not understanding it. I'm not understanding how it's a breach of decorum to point out that a person during their life did shitty things. We do this all the time. It's practically the national sport at this point online anyway. So he was literally arrested. The doorman actually got into a tussle with him and then threw him to the ground, and then he gets arrested. He technically got assaulted, but it's him who got the cuffs put on him. So-called justice system at its finest. That's about all. Peace out.